Good morning, everyone. This is the Turtle Wins the Race Home-Based Business Podcast where I talk about home-based business topics. And today's topic might be a little depressing. It might not be as I'm not perky. All right. So you can throw that out the window. But I looked back on the other episodes that I've done, and I did talk about this before, which was, excuse me, start coughing right away. The episode about burnout and the myth of balance. If you haven't listened to that one yet, I would definitely listen to it. But I started watching it just to see what I said. And I seem to be very upbeat. All right. So I think I was more talking about the myth of balance and just trying to point out that when people talk about burnout, it's usually because you feel like you're taking on too much, because you feel like you've got to have everything in place in your life correctly. And that's just ridiculous because that doesn't happen in real life. But I was thinking about this because I'm burned out. I'm there. I have realized in the past couple of weeks, and I think that people probably might have picked up on this based on things that I've said in different lives and on YouTube and in my eShop group and stuff. I'm burned out. And it's because of whatever, I don't know. I've been burned out in the past for different situational kind of things that happened. Like my mother died. I was burned out. I didn't care about working. And that was when I was still doing wedding cakes, and I still had to do wedding cakes. So you still have to work. I just didn't care about it. I think you get to the point where you're like, I can't deal with this mentally, but I have to. And that's what gives you the burnout. So for me right now, I am just kind of at a weird point in my life. And I look back on my work history. I tend to work at a thing like a job or a business, whatever, for a decent amount of time. And then I kind of shift over into something else. And I feel that shift happening now for me. So I know exactly part of this is that Etsy has been so insane, right? And I've really focused on Etsy for a long time because I found it interesting. And I do make a living on Etsy, okay? But it's not predictable. Nothing online, nothing in life is predictable, really. I mean, you can have a 9-to-5 job and get fired. You can get laid off for no fault of your own. So nothing is really predictable. But selling online is really unpredictable. The only thing you can predict about that is that you don't know what's going to happen. So that's the only thing. But Etsy recently has just lost its mind. And it's so completely different just as a platform. It's exhausting. I am exhausted with Etsy. So I think for a while, one of the things I'm going to do is kind of put Etsy, I don't want to say on the back burner, because it's just, I have to take a mental break from Etsy. So like the videos that I put on this channel are kind of going to be about other things. I don't usually focus a lot of attention on my Etsy shop because it kind of, at this point, it kind of runs itself. So there's not going to be a lot of change there. But I have realized that in the past 3 or 4 months, I've started delisting things on Etsy. So it's not like when something doesn't sell in 4 months, I would just relist it because it's 20 cents, right? No big deal. Well, now I've started not renewing those things. And I did it to begin with just because I'm trying to get out of some of the products that I sell as far as, what they are. Because I've talked about the silicone mold thing. I started to develop an allergy to the silicone mold, which isn't good. The silicone that you make the molds with, depending on what it is, it can trigger allergic reactions over time. So that's one logical reason. But there is an entire product line that I eliminated completely because I'm just sick of making them. And I'm able to make those decisions because I have made a lot of money selling products on my website and on Etsy in the past 10 years. And I'm very financially frugal. I'm very careful financially. So I do have a cushion. I have a backup. I have a retirement fund. I have money in the bank. So I'm able to do that. And that's what I want for all of you. Okay. I want you guys to be able to be at that point in your life where you can say, I can cut back and I'm not going to hurt for it. I'm not going to worry about how to pay the bills. I can do that. Now I know that tomorrow I could get hit by a truck and get millions of medical bills and it'll be a nightmare. Anything can happen, right? So that's one reason, like, I would quit working tomorrow if I could. I'm not financially independent. I'm not independently wealthy, so I'm not going to quit working. But when you get to the point where you're just like, you don't care, I feel apathetic toward Etsy at this point. And, like I said, part of it is that it's just time. It's thinking about it all the time and it gets tiring. But it's also when Etsy starts losing its mind and doing the most ridiculous things that it's doing, and we all know what those things are. It could be different this week than last week. I don't know. But it gets to the point where you're like, it's like having an abusive relationship, right? And you're in the relationship, you've invested time in the relationship, and then they start to change. And you're like, is it going to go back to how it was? Or should I just say, this is not for me. Okay. Now I'm not going to quit selling on Etsy, but like I said, I've started kind of downsizing my shop. Mentally, I'm thinking I don't want to make as much money on Etsy as I did last year. I don't. And it's a weird situation to be able to be in a position to say that, because usually if you run a business, you want to make as much money as possible, right? I'm not willing to put in the time to increase my Etsy earnings at this point because Etsy is so insane. And the things that they're doing, and to me, what happens is when Etsy starts reaching into our shops and putting things in our listings that are taking people out of the listing to somewhere else, or they're manipulating our prices. And they did this years ago. At one point they had, this made everybody in the forums insane. At one point they had started adding, I think this was just a test, they were adding the shipping price into the listing price and then showing that as the listing price. And, you calculate your shipping very carefully. You price things very carefully. You calculate your shipping very carefully for a reason. So when Etsy reaches their claws into your shop and just kind of breaks that barrier and starts manipulating things, that's when I draw the line. And that's starting to happen now. I don't like it. I can't invest a whole lot more time into developing things if that's going to be the situation. And the most recent thing that we've seen, and I hope it's a test, but I don't think it is. I think it's going to stay, is this little black box at the end of your listings, regardless of how many listing photos you have. This thing shows up with related searches. When you click on that, it takes people to a new search, which means they're leaving your shop. Okay. That's something that I don't like, clearly. But I don't know if it's affecting me as far as traffic goes, but I do see the patterns. I see what Etsy is trying to do. Okay. Yes, they're trying to drive revenue because that's their job. Okay. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff going on Etsy that is just exhausting. It's exhausting keeping up with it. It's exhausting trying to figure out what we should be, if there's anything we can do about it, because usually there's nothing you can do about it. But I have so many other projects too that I would prefer to be working on. And that's the thing. Is that when you feel burned out, it's usually because you're putting effort into one thing that you really want to be doing something else. And if you can figure that out, then that will help make you less burned out, right? So what I've been doing and what I'm planning on doing is my word for the year. I've told you guys my word for the year is shift. So I'm kind of shifting gears. From now to the end of the year, I'm going to be taking a look at the things that I have on, for offer, what they say for offer, things that I have for sale. I have a website. I have my Etsy shop. I'm looking into a couple of other platforms just as a more passive way to sell other things and kind of spread everything out. And I will be making videos about that on my channel. The first one will be this week, or I think the first one was last week because I'm scheduling this video for next week. But it's the product business that I think for me I'm going to be focusing more on specific things and not selling as much as I do now. I have a lot of listings right now and it's fine. I can manage it on my website, but I'm just, it's, you guys know how I feel, right? Because I'm sure that everyone has felt this way at some point. that you just feel like you've got too much going on and you have to figure out what's really important and what you like doing. I don't work for myself so that I can do things that I don't like, right? And that's a little selfish, but okay, that's okay. And we should all have the freedom to work the way that you want to work. So, like I said, I'm going to be kind of narrowing my focus. That's a good way to put it. I'm narrowing my focus as far as the products go. I might be expanding the platforms that I sell on. I've got a couple of platforms in mind. And like I said, I probably did a video about a couple of them last week. I'm going to be eliminating some of the classes that I have, and they're all listed in Teachable. I'm going to be focusing on the ones that I really like. And then there are things that I'm doing outside of any of this that I'm going to be working more on. And most of that is related to the blogging. I really enjoy writing. I really like blogging. I think it's fun. I think it's a challenge. See, I like the challenge of getting traffic. I like the challenge of figuring out things like systems. But there's certain systems that have run amok, and Etsy is one of them. All right. So I think it's really the Etsy part is exhausting me. I'm not going to stop selling on Etsy. Like I said, I will still sell on Etsy, but I definitely am going to be narrowing my focus and eliminating things and just selling those on my website just to drop the volume of that. I'm planning on not earning as much money this year. And that's because I kind of need a break. I kind of need a break to breathe. I need a break to get away from all this kind of stuff. Now, if you're listening to this and you're like, this is me, I feel the same way. It's really important to sit down and actually look at your numbers. And what I tend to do is I'll mull something over in my head for a couple of months. And this is for like major life changes, right? And then I will say to my husband, this is what I've been thinking about. And he'll start coming up with solutions. I'm like, I'm not ready for that yet. I'm just telling you that this is what I've been thinking about. And I'm going to continue thinking about it, but I just put it into words and now it's out and it's in your head now. So it's coming. And then he's like, okay. And then maybe in another month, I will sit down with him and we'll look at our finances and see what the reality is. Because I think a lot of times you don't know what the reality is until you actually sit down and look at your numbers. And I have a feeling that based on how frugal I am, because I'm pretty damn cheap. I am pretty cheap and I love coupons. I love the BOGOs. It's a challenge. It's a game. I have a feeling that I probably could quit working right now and I would still be fine. I'm not going to do that because I like working, right? That's kind of my hobby. Yesterday I was playing Zelda all day because I'm like, I need a break. I'm just going to play Zelda all day. So I was playing Zelda all day. And then after about 6 hours, I'm like, I really feel like writing a blog post, okay? Because I was getting tired of Zelda. What the heck? If I'm getting tired of Zelda and I feel like writing a blog post, then that tells me that I really enjoy writing a blog post. All right. So that could be one of the answers. It's a shifting year. This is a year to shift. But when you're feeling burned out, you need to sit down and actually look at the reality of it. What is making you feel this way? Why are you feeling this way? What can you do about it? Because nobody likes feeling burned out. And for me, it wasn't like I wake up every morning hating my job. I don't. It's just I'm starting to feel apathetic. I'm starting to feel like, whatever. Okay. And that's not good. That's burnout. That's burnout. And that will lead to being miserable in the long run if you just don't care. And there are things that I do care about in this work. And I want to keep caring about them. So I want to focus on the right things. All right. So if you have ever felt this way, let me know. Because I have felt this way in the past, and you just have to shift and you have to make sure that you're actually paying attention to the things that you like. But I think that people think of burnout as this big thing. It's a big obvious thing. But for most people, it kind of creeps up on you. It creeps up on you and you don't really know that you're feeling burned out until you finally put a name to it. And then you're like, oh, okay. So I'm saying it right now. I'm burned out. I'm going to make some changes maybe freshen things up a little bit. Like I said, I'm not going to talk about Etsy so much on this channel. That might be good for me. We'll see. And just give this video a thumbs up. Let me know if you have ever felt the same way and what you did about it. And watch for the changes that I'm going to be making coming up. And by the end of the year, this is June as I'm recording this, by December, I will know what I'm doing. And I will probably have made some changes at that point. So just watch for that. So I will talk to you later. See ya.